Hey, what's going on, you guys? Welcome to episode number 169 of Mirrorless Minutes. It's just me tonight, rolling solo. Jerry I think he messaged me and said he's entertaining clients tonight. I don't know if he's prostituting himself or if it's for his day job, but yeah, so Jerry won't be making it tonight. So you're just gonna have to put up with me. It'll probably be a little bit of a shorter show because it is just me. So again, I apologize. You'll just kind of have to bear with it and just deal with just me tonight. A couple of things I want to talk about tonight. The show topic pretty much was going to be, how are you going to end your 2021 year? Hey, gorgeous. I love it when my girlfriend shows up on the show. That is always gets my heart going. Yo, what up, Dwayne? It looks like we've got a massive crowd of 5 people watching tonight, but hey, if I've even got one of your guys' attention, it's worth it to jump back in here. It's been a little bit of a hiatus. You get towards the end of the year, things get busy and get hectic, and just schedules start conflicting. It's getting tougher and tougher to get Jerry and I to have schedules that align with one another. So might be more of just me. I don't know if Jerry remembers, but I did grant him access to be able to start shows on his own. So there is the potential for you guys to get completely blindsided one week and have it be just Jerry for a change. That would be kind of different. Mr. Black. So David Black is in the audience tonight. Love David. He's a great guy. He was so fun to be with in Utah, and he came on one of the workshops we did out there. He's just a sweet, great guy. And I'm glad he's here tonight because I'm hoping he will mention in the chat how his chase of the Polar Express train went. So David lives down a state from me. I think you're in Indiana, right, David? And he mentioned that I think he's got family, or his wife has family here in Michigan. And a couple of weeks ago, he reached out to me asking me about potential locations to be posted up to photograph the Polar Express train. And if what I'm saying about the Polar Express train, you're just wondering, like, what the hell is he even talking about? If you remember the children's story, Polar Express, they made an animated movie out of that with Tom Hanks in it about the Christmas train. The book was based on a train that's actually here in Michigan, and it's an old steam train. Super cool. Looks like something that would take like the kids to Hogwarts, or actually, I guess it looks like the Christmas train from Polar Express because that's what it was modeled after. Well, that train gives rides around the Christmas season. It's super cool to go see. And David reached out because I had photographed it a few years in a row and had a couple of cool spots to photograph from. So he reached out asking if I had some locations for him to use. And I gave him like a popular spot that a lot of people shoot from, but I also gave him like the secret spot. And I'm just kind of curious to see if he mentions in the chat room whether or not he had any success at those locations. I'm hoping he did. It's a cool thing to experience. Yes, he is in Indiana. And I think it's going to be the David show tonight. I think David is into spelunking too, if I remember correctly. It's quite an adventurous guy. So again, thanks for coming on tonight, David. Really appreciate it. So again, premise of the show tonight: how are you going to wrap up your 2021 year in photography? The days are getting a little bit shorter. We've got a little bit less light to work with, but it is wintertime, and wintertime means lower humidity, which means great opportunities for astrophotography this time of year. So that's something that I've kind of put down for myself as something that I want to do hopefully before the end of the year, is get out and do some more astro in the colder weather, because again, less humidity in the air means you get less distortion in the stars. You tend to generally have less clouds at night. I mean, granted, it makes for insanely cold nights when there's no clouds to kind of keep the heat in, but great opportunities again for astro. So that's one of the things that I'm working towards doing to round out my years, to make a trip somewhere dark and do some astrophotography. And I'm really running out of time to do it, so I've really got to get the hustle on to make that happen. So, but again, that is on my list. And, here where I'm at in Michigan, the weather is wild, I guess you could say. We never know what we're going to get. We could end up with a crazy snowstorm, and then the next day it could be 50 degrees out, and maybe even thunderstorms. I know this weekend I had hoped to get out and do some of that nighttime photography, but Saturday we've got a crazy windstorm coming in. They're talking about gusts that could hit 60 mile an hour or more on Saturday. So doesn't look like that is going to happen. And I kind of wanted to get out and do a little more birding too. I've kind of jumped back into that with the recent purchase of a lens for my Sony system. And I'll talk about that a little bit more as we go on. But for those of you who are watching in the chat, if you do have plans for the rest of the year, I'd love to hear what kind of things you're going to get into to round out your 2021. And, as far as photography is concerned, always interested to hear what other people are doing, because I know what I'm doing. I want to know what you're doing. So yeah, that's it for me. Really, pretty much is just going to be, I'd like to get one more trip in for bird photography and then get some astro in. But like I said, here in Michigan, weather really tends to dictate that. And it's not that I don't have equipment that will work under those conditions. It's whether or not I can work under those conditions. I feel like the older I get, the less I want to be out in the cold. So, it makes it a little rough. And so David says he chased the Polar Express and got at least 4 spots, nothing secret. Always several people at each spot. Some steam engine trained people are very odd people. Dude, they are. And I don't know if I told you before you left on this, David, but photographing that train, you're probably not going to be ever alone in photographing that train. It's a very, very, very popular thing to photograph. Turning into one of those things that becomes too popular to photograph. I think it was 2 years ago, prior to COVID, there was video that popped up online of, I think it was a woman standing next to the tracks, photographing the train. And you know how it is when you're a photographer and you're living your life like this, looking through the lens, you get that disconnect from what's really going on in the world. And depending on the lens that you're using, your perception of depth and things like that are not what they are in reality. And this woman was within inches of the train hitting her. She wasn't on the tracks, but she was right next to the tracks, but close enough to where, railings and, different pieces of apparatus on the train kind of overhang the sides of the tracks a bit, obviously. And she darn near got knocked completely off her feet by this train. I think somebody grabbed her jacket and kind of gave her a little pull to the side because she was so unaware. So, again, it's the curse and the blessing of social media. When something cool like that, you want to share it. That's why I was quick to give David, like the spots that I've shot from and all of that. But I don't think I mentioned to him just that it might be crowded. But I know I did mention to him that one of the stops for the train, probably one of the most popular spots to photograph it from, I don't even think you can go there anymore and shoot because it has turned into like a 3-ring circus and it's getting dangerous. So if you do reach out to me, anyone, about photography locations, I always try to mention things like, proper etiquette. So Davis said that they had police and firefighters at each crossing, which they need. Like I said, it's, people have good intentions. They just might not have good common sense when they go do these things. So, and it applies to a lot of different subject matter in photography as well. I had a friend reach out, and he might even be watching tonight, looking at the viewer count climbing up, and he drops in quite frequently on the show. And I won't mention him by name, but he reached out a couple of weeks ago after I had mentioned that I was going out to photograph the snowy owls because they had returned here. And he's a good guy. And he knew, he prefaced his question about where to go with, "Don't worry, I won't approach, or get too close." So I love that there are enough photographers who are knowledgeable about, things like don't get too close to the railroad tracks or don't get too close to the wildlife, things like that. But if people do reach out, I'm not going to not tell someone where a thing is, a location is, an event or whatever. But I sound a little, I don't know, like a parent, or whatever, I always try to tell people, like with the snowy owls, the rule at the location where I go shoot is that you're not supposed to get within 100 feet. I tell people I'm never within 400 or 500 feet. I stay back quite a ways. That's why they make telephoto lenses. And you shouldn't approach an animal like that. A lot of people don't understand that. I'll speak specifically about the snowy owls right now, that they fly down from the Arctic Circle. They fly thousands of miles to get here. And when they arrive, they're half dead. I mean, they're starving to death. They've flown literally thousands of miles to get here. They need rest. And I've been to a couple of locations where the snowies come to. And again, like the train, it turns into a circus when word gets out on where they're at. And I've seen people get really close to the snowy owls on their feet, like walking to them. Granted, the place that I go shoot, there are a lot of instances where the owls are next to the road or a drive, and you have to drive past them to get out. And it is what it is, and generally the owls don't even blink an eye, at a passing vehicle. But the minute people get out, they recognize, that it is a danger to them. So they fly away, wasting valuable energy. And we've had owls here in Michigan die because they get pestered by photographers. So again, I'll keep repeating the same thing. I won't not tell you where something is to go shoot, but I might sound a little fatherly, in my delivery of the information, by telling you, don't do this, don't do that, make sure you're aware of this and that, but it's not because I don't trust you or anything like that. It's because I have seen firsthand how social media can ruin places like this, or, in some cases actually kill wildlife. So, and David mentioned at Garland. So Garland is this, I don't want to call it a town. It's not even a village. It's like an intersection in the road pretty much where the train goes across, but there's an old grain elevator that the train passes. And that was one of the places I mentioned to David that might be shut down. And he said that there were large orange drums to ruin it for photos. So again, because it turned into such a circus, it sounds like the local authorities have basically made it a not valuable spot to photograph. So it's just kind of how it happens. Dwayne says 765 nickel plate engine comes to Ohio every year. I did it once because of rude and dangerous people. Yeah, it sucks because honestly, 75% of the people that ruin it really aren't photographers. Like the people who are watching and listening to this podcast, I would consider all of us photographers. We understand, we don't take it lightly. I mean, we had fun with it, but we understand, that there are repercussions to our actions. We're generally, everybody that I know is very respectful in these kinds of situations, but it's the people who get a camera and they see our pictures online and they think, well, I want to go do that too. And they just don't understand, etiquette, as it were. So yeah, it sucks that they ruined it for you, Dwayne. I don't know. I'm not familiar with that train. I'm not really a train guy necessarily, but they're fun to shoot. They're definitely fun to photograph. I mean, heck, I took a picture of my truck sitting next to a locomotive engine just the other day. So, I mean, I can dig it for sure. But yeah, just wanted to kind of throw that out there. I don't know if that's my public service announcement or what that was, or how I actually got onto that tangent. But yeah. So anyways, again, if you want to reach out to me with questions about places to go shoot here in Michigan, I'll give you all the secret spots. Again, you might get a little bit of a lecture from me on how to approach those areas or whatever. If it's someplace, that requires some special attention, it just reminds me of the workshop in Utah, on the night before the workshop began. I'm sure David remembers, we kind of had a sit down at the condo that we had rented out and kind of went over some of the things that we'd be doing, but also mentioned the fact that there is a very particular type of soil that is in Arches National Park that you shouldn't step on. It's very similar to the way coral is, and that if you step on it, you're basically killing thousands of years, worth of growth just with your footsteps. So again, just be a good steward of the land on which you're, treading, and just take care of things and leave it as you found it when you go. So I'm going to jump into some photos real quick. Again, I said this will probably be a little bit of an abbreviated show, and I'm sorry if I don't go into too much depth on a couple of different topics, but I am going to talk about a recent gear purchase too, as well, because it's kind of what I was using for some of the stuff here. So let me get this share going here real quick. It's so weird to not be able to lean on somebody else to fill in the gaps in my talking. Ugh, bizarre. All right, so this first photo here was taken actually. It wasn't too long after I'd gotten a new lens for my Sony, and I know you guys are probably sick of hearing me talk about Sony all the time, but again, I'm just in a prolonged honeymoon with that Sony system, and I went out and bought their 200 to 600 millimeter. It's f5.6 to 6.3. I'll tell you what, that lens is amazing. Crazy amount of detail in the shots that I get from it, but that thing weighs like 4.5 pounds. And compared to the equivalent on my Olympus, the 300 millimeter f4, I mean, I might as well be carrying a Volkswagen Beetle with me that's attached to a camera. It is so heavy. But again, I needed something for the full frame because it does offer something that I can't do with my Olympus when I'm using my A7R3. You know, that's like a 42 megapixel camera. So I'm able to take that lens and then crop in like to like the center, 50% of the image, and basically get, the field of view in my mind of like what a 1200 millimeter would be, full frame equivalent. So again, it offers me some opportunities that I really didn't have with the Sony before. And now I feel like minus a macro, I feel like I have two equal systems now in Olympus and Sony. So it's pretty cool and pretty exciting to be able to pick and choose what I want, now completely. So this is the backside of a Sandhill Crane. There's a metro park here in Michigan, kind of over towards the east side of the state. It's Kensington Metro Park. So I should have mentioned this to you, David. If you come back to Michigan again, you should visit Kensington Metro Park. It's kind of near Brighton and Milford, again, towards the east side of the state. But I love going there because the wildlife is so acclimated to people. It's like being at a zoo to photograph birds and wildlife, except no bars, no cages, no kids throwing popcorn at the animals or whatever. It's a wildlife experience, yet you're able to get very close to animals there. And the Sandhill Cranes they're fascinating to me. First of all, because they sound like dinosaurs when they make their noises. So, but they're beautiful. They're a beautiful bird. And this is just the backside of a Sandhill Crane. I let it walk up to me. It pecked at my pockets for a minute to see if I had food in them, which I'll talk about in a second. And I just let them carry on about their business and walk past me. And as they walked past, they stopped for a second. And I've been wanting to get like a close-up detail shot of their feathers, but I just had never done it, I guess. So as they got past me, this was from probably about 25 feet away. And that's with the Sony A7R3 and the 200 to 600 millimeter lens, and then cropped in a little bit. And I was so excited after I took this photo because in the center of the image, you can see that gap in the feathers. And there's this little curly Q of a feather that just kind of pokes out, and just completely fell in love with this image. I was so glad, again, to get a detail shot of feathers and then to have this little gem of a detail tucked away in there. It really put a smile on my face. The next one is, again, another Sandhill Crane image, probably the same crane that I took the butt shot of, but just a little bit more of a portrait shot. And unfortunately, my Sonys don't have eye autofocus detect for birds on them. That's not, privy to that cool firmware update, that a lot of the other Sonys got, or like the Olympus cameras have with the autofocus. But it was definitely easy to lock focus. Again, that lens does a great job of snapping focus super quick. But what really impressed me about this image is that, let me open up the inspector here. I guess I just do it this way. And I hope it shows up here. What I really liked about this was, where's my ISO? It says recommended exposure 6400. So I don't know if that means that that's what the exposure was on this one or the ISO, but again, one of those perks of, the Sony sensor in those cameras is that this was a super, super overcast day. And most of my shots were between ISO 6400 and ISO 12,800. and no noise reduction or anything done like that in post. This is just how they come out of the camera. Again, very pleased with how these worked out. I do struggle a little bit with keeping the images sharp. Again, 4.5 pound lens, and I'm suffering from tennis elbow for the last 2 months now almost. So a 4.5 pound lens becomes a bit much. I think my age is starting to show. And this photo was taken. I met up with a buddy of mine over there. Actually, a few buddies, a few friends. My buddy Jason Gotti met me over at Kensington Metro Park. He's kind of a local there. And then another couple of friends of mine, husband and wife, John and Kathy Thomas, also met up over there. And we did probably it was a couple of mile walk around Kensington Metro Park. And I was running out of things that were catching my attention, I guess. We gotten away from where all the animals were. And I wanted to play around with just how much separation you get from a foreground subject and the background with a full frame camera, which already has a shallow depth of field, but then also extending it out to that 600 millimeter focal length. And I got lucky enough to find what I found to be an interesting subject were these vines that had twisted around each other and then started to wrap around this pine tree. And so that was again, an opportunity for me to also be able to just check out how that separation of foreground and background works on the full frame camera, but at an extended focal length. And again, pretty impressed with how it worked out. And again, let me see here. So I just want to see. So this is one, again, the ISO 12,800. And again, different tools for different purposes, I guess. And again, I reiterate that a lot. I spent so many years, praising what Micro Four Thirds is and has to offer. And it does. It has a ton to offer, and it's amazing at what it does. But the one thing that it lacked for me for a lot of the subjects that I like to shoot or want to be able to shoot was the ability to be able to ramp that ISO way up to keep a fast shutter speed. Again, for photographing animals, or in this case, to be able to handhold a 4.5 pound lens with a basically useless arm and still get a sharp image. So 12,800 ISO made that possible for me. So I mentioned talking about the Sandhill Cranes pecking at my pockets, and there's a reason that they do that there, because all of the birds at Kensington Metro Park, for the most part, they will eat right out of your hands. I think people don't encourage others to feed the Sandhill Cranes because, well, they can get aggressive and they're big. And if you're like me, like 5'5", they're damn near eye level with you. So you don't want to be feeding them and then get them upset and have them peck you in the eyes. But birds like this little dark-eyed junco here, they will fly and land right in the palm of your hand and eat seed and take off, as well as numerous other species of smaller birds as well. So again, just more shots of me practicing with the 200 to 600 and again, just ramping that ISO up quite a ways. This one, not as high as some of the others. This is the ISO 5000, but again, just 100% usable results right out of the camera without having to do any sort of noise reduction in post, it's nice to be able to do that. Again, I know that the tools are available for noise reduction no matter what system you're shooting, and they're amazing now. But again, got to be able to remove that step of, from the workflow for me. So it was kind of cool. And again, walking around Kensington, the reason we did such a prolonged walk is that my buddy Jason basically knew where we should go if we wanted to photograph deer. I was hoping to photograph, there's an albino doe that wanders around the park, and she's been there for a few years now. And she's like the ghost of Kensington Metro Park. I'm dying to get a good photo of her. I've only seen her once, and it was pre-dawn, so blue hour, and I was shooting with the Olympus system back then. And just the images that I got, they just weren't usable. They were just really blocky and muddy because it was pretty dark. And again, I had to crank the ISO way up. But we were fortunate enough to come across a couple of, small herds of deer, and this small buck was, again, among those animals. And this is, again, at 600 millimeters, and, 600 millimeters is long. If you've shot with the Olympus 300 or a 600 millimeter on a full frame camera, you know how far out that reaches. So for me to fill the frame this much with the deer, it lets you know how close I was. I was probably a couple 100 feet away at the most, maybe more like 120 feet away. And the deer they don't run away. They'll just turn around and walk slowly away if you get too close, but they never really just bolt and run away. You can get really close. So again, if you're in Michigan, I would highly recommend visiting Kensington Metro Park any time of the year. The animals are just super photogenic there. So this next shot is a case of damn, I wasn't fast enough. This was at the location where I photographed the snowy owls in West Michigan. And I was sitting in my truck looking out over the water, and I saw this bird skimming across the surface of the water, super low, super fast. And I thought it might be a falcon. I wasn't quite sure because it just buzzed by super quick. So I watched it circle around 180, basically 360 degrees. I guess it passed me, circled around behind me, around the other side of me, around in front of me. And I literally watched it snag this shoveler duck out of the water 75 feet in front of me, maybe 50 feet in front of me, the whole entire time holding my camera with my mouth open, just amazed to watch it happen. Kind of sucks that I didn't get a photograph of it actually grabbing the duck, but I do have, like 100 photos that look just like this of the falcon taking away that shoveler duck and seagulls chasing it away. Man, but again, one of those things where disappointed I don't have a photo of the action shot. But once I got over that initial, bummer feeling, I was pretty stoked to be able to watch that. That's the kind of thing most people don't get to witness really ever, in their life. They might see it on a television show on Discovery Channel or something, but to witness it and hear the impact of that falcon hitting the duck it was astounding to me. And it was just super cool. But again, happy that I was able to at least get a couple of shots as it was flying away with its lunch. About 40 minutes later, after circling through the property quite a bit, I found where the falcon landed to eat his lunch. And he sat there the entire time letting me snap. I've probably got 50 or 60 photos. These are all handheld, shooting out of my truck, resting on the window. So a little bit stabilized, and very happy with the results from that Sony lens. Locked on focus, super fast, and just, like I said, rattled off shot after shot as he was eating. I know it's gruesome. I don't know if I'm supposed to give like a trigger alert or some kind of warning for those watching us, but it's nature. Everything has to eat. I'd rather see this than a factory farm, I guess, any day. And then the last shot, if you're friends with me on Facebook, you're probably sick of hearing about this damn thing, but I waited forever to get this truck. So I got my Bronco, and then I just got it wrapped the other week with a vinyl wrap. So the pattern that you see on my truck in this photo is actually a vinyl wrap that I had put on it. And I was driving home from work. And just because of the time of year, I guess that's a blessing, is that when I'm driving home, I get to see sunsets. And the sun was really starting to just make magic in the sky here in Michigan. And we had some fresh snow. So I just raced around until I could find a location basically that just offered me, an open view of the sky in the background. So that's what I did here. I just backed into that spot. And this is shot with the Sony A7 III, not the R3, and Tamron's 17 to 28 millimeter single exposure, not bracketed or anything like that. Again, like I said, I was pretty stoked to get a good sunset and to get a couple of, kind of cool shots of my vehicle. That's just mostly what I've been kind of up to lately. Is honestly, I've just been shooting a lot of pictures of my truck. I'm turning into that guy. I'm turning into the guy that takes photos of his truck instead of wildlife and landscapes. But, I'm sure that honeymoon phase will pass with my vehicle, and it'll just become like what it is, which is a tool for me to get around to hopefully take photos of other things. So that's what I've been up to. And I apologize, again, that we've been off the air for as long as we have. It's tough to organize schedules. Jerry and I had planned on doing a Thanksgiving evening show, and yeah, it just didn't work out. So again, apologies. Thank you guys for sticking around though, and at least coming to tonight's show. And for those of you that subscribe to the audio, thank you again for sticking it out and listening to this episode when it does go live, wherever you do get your podcasts. I'm going to cut it short for tonight. I would love for you guys to consider coming on the end of the year show. I don't have the date set for that. It might not necessarily be on a Thursday like, our normal show is, but Jerry and I want to do an end of the year show, and it's going to be an open invite. So prior to the show, we'll have the announcement for the show go out at least 3 days early. And in that announcement, there is going to be a link to join the show. So if you got the guts and you want to shoot this stuff with us, then come on the show. We'd love to have you on the show as a guest and bring photos to share and conversation to have with everybody. Thanks for tuning in this week, you guys. Again, greatly appreciate having you guys out there listening to me babble. You guys take care. Get out there and shoot into your 2021 with some fresh new photos, and we'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.